Snow pressed down the canyon like a held breath, whitening the world until edges disappeared and distance meant nothing. The cowboy had learned to read storms the way other men read faces. And this one had teeth. He kept his head low against the wind, collar turned up, reins loose in his gloved hand as his horse picked its way along the narrow cut between rock and pine. Every sound was swallowed, hoofbeats muffled, breath torn away. It was the kind of quiet that made a man feel watched. He heard the whisper before he saw them. A thread of sound so thin he thought at first it was the wind working a trick. Then it came again, closer, trembling. "Mister!" He pulled his horse to a stop. The animal snorted, steam curling from its nostrils. The cowboy scanned the trees, eyes narrowed against the snow, heart ticking up a notch. People didn't wander these parts in winter, and children least of all. "There," the boy said, stepping out from behind a snow-bent juniper. The child couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. He stood barefoot in the drifts, toes red and stiff, a coat hanging off him like it belonged to someone else. One arm was hooked under a woman's shoulder. His small body braced and shaking with the effort of holding her upright. Snow had crusted along the hem of her skirt and gathered in her hair. Her head lolled forward, chin pressed to her chest, breath shallow and uneven. The cowboy swung down before he thought better of it. The cold bit through his boots as soon as he hit the ground. He took a step toward them and stopped, not wanting to spook the boy. "Easy now," he said, keeping his voice low, steady. "You're all right." The boy swallowed. His eyes were too big for his face, dark and glossy with fear. "Mama can't walk anymore," he whispered. Like saying it too loud might make it worse. The woman tried to straighten, pride flashing through the pain. She sucked in a breath that shuddered. "I'm fine. Just need a minute." Her knees buckled before the lie finished leaving her mouth. The boy cried out, tightening his grip, but he was too small. They started to go down together. The cowboy closed the distance in 3 strides and caught them, one arm under the woman's back, the other scooping the boy against his chest. She weighed nothing and everything at once. Fever burned through her clothes. He could feel it even through his coat. Her head tipped back, lips pale, eyes unfocused. "I didn't mean to trouble you," she said, breath hitching. "We were just... my sister's place is only..." The wind cut her off, roaring down the canyon, flinging needles of snow at their faces. The cowboy turned his body to shield them, jaw tightening as he took it. He didn't ask questions. Winter didn't wait for answers. "Where you headed?" He asked anyway, because it mattered which way to turn. The boy pointed with a mittenless hand, fingers stiff and blue. "Down there. Mama said the river bends and then the road." The cowboy followed the direction with his eyes and felt his stomach sink. Even on horseback it would be a hard ride. On foot, impossible. He glanced back the way he'd come, toward the darker stand of pines where his cabin waited. Smoke probably gone cold by now. "All right," he said, decision settling in his bones. He shifted his grip, lifting the woman more securely, tucking the boy higher on his hip. The child clung to him instantly, arms locking around his neck like he'd been waiting for permission to let go. The woman protested weakly. "Sir, you don't have to." "Save your breath," the cowboy said. "You'll need it." He turned toward the trees. Each step was work, snow grabbing at his legs, the weight in his arms changing. As the woman sagged and the boy squirmed to keep, his face buried against the cowboy's shoulder. The horse stood where he'd left it, ears flicking, patient as stone. The cowboy reached up with his free hand and slapped the reins against the saddle horn. "Stay," he told the animal, and trusted it would. The boy's breath puffed hot and fast against his collar. "Mama?" he asked, voice cracking. "I'm here," the woman murmured, though her eyes were closed now. Her lashes were rimed with frost. "You're both doing fine," the cowboy said, more to himself than to them. He kept moving, muscles burning, lungs scraping the cold air. The cabin came into view in pieces, the sag of the roof under snow, the dark line of the door, the window black as a blind eye. He hadn't thought much of it when he built the place, just a shelter, a stopgap, but now it looked like a promise. Halfway there, the woman stirred, a sharp sound tearing out of her as pain seized her. The cowboy tightened his hold, feeling the tremor run through her. "Easy," he said. "I've got you." She opened her eyes and met his for a heartbeat. There was fear there, yes, but also a fierce, aching trust that made his chest tighten. "My boy," she whispered. "Please." "I won't drop him," he said, meaning more than just his grip. Snow piled against the cabin door, drifted nearly to the latch. He set his shoulder to it and shoved. the hinges groaning as the door gave. Cold air spilled inside, chased by the smell of pine and old smoke. He stepped over the threshold and kicked the door shut behind him with his heel. For a moment, in the dim, all he could hear was breathing, ragged, uneven, 3 lives pulled tight together. The boy lifted his head and looked around, eyes darting.
"Is this yours?"
"Yeah," the cowboy said. He crossed the small space and lowered them carefully onto the table, the only surface clear enough. The woman gasped but didn't cry out. The boy kept his arms around her, forehead pressed to her shoulder, as if holding her together by will alone. The cowboy straightened, rolled his shoulders once, and went to work. He didn't know yet how bad it was, how long the storm would last, or what the morning might bring. He only knew what was in front of him. A child who'd walked until his feet bled, a mother who'd kept moving long past the point of sense, and a winter that would have taken them if it could. Outside, the wind howled its disappointment. Inside, the cowboy reached for matches. Fire took a few tries to wake, the first match sputtering uselessly, the second flaring just long enough to bite his thumb. The cowboy hissed and struck a third, shielding it with his palm until the flame caught the kindling and climbed, slow but sure, into the stacked logs. Heat crept outward, timid at first, then bolder, filling the cabin with the smell of resin and smoke. He shrugged out of his coat and laid it over the woman's legs, then pulled blankets from the foot of the bed and wrapped her tight, tucking them in the way his mother used to when sickness came calling. The boy hovered close, hands clenched in the hem of his too-big coat, eyes tracking every movement. He didn't cry. That worried the cowboy more than tears would have. Children who didn't cry had learned too early that it didn't help. "Come here," the cowboy said gently, nodding toward the fire. "Warm yourself." The boy hesitated, glancing back at his mother as if she might vanish if he took a step away. The woman's eyes were closed now, her breathing shallow but steadier, a faint sheen of sweat on her brow that told the cowboy the fever was still burning. He placed 2 fingers at her neck, careful, respectful. The pulse fluttered fast and weak under his touch. "She's sleeping," he said. "That's good." The boy nodded, though doubt lingered in the tight line of his mouth. He shuffled closer to the hearth, stretching his hands toward the flames. The skin on his fingers was raw, cracked in places, red with cold. The cowboy's jaw set. He filled a tin kettle from the water barrel and set it to heat, then rummaged through his shelves for what little he had: dried beans, salt, coffee grounds, a small sack of oats. He'd made do with less, but never when someone else's life leaned on it. "Name?" he asked, keeping his voice casual as he poured water into a cup and added a spoonful of sugar he usually saved for Sundays. "Eli," the boy said. He accepted the cup with both hands when it was offered, steam fogging his lashes. "Mama's name is Ruth." "That's a good name," the cowboy said. "Both of them." Eli took a careful sip, eyes widening at the sweetness. Color crept back into his cheeks. He glanced at the bed. "She don't like me to fuss." "She won't mind tonight," the cowboy said. "Tonight's for staying." The kettle began to whistle. He poured hot water over a cloth and wrung it out, then laid it across Ruth's forehead. She stirred, a low sound catching in her throat, and he paused, waiting. When she settled again, he exhaled and moved on, pulling off her boots with practiced hands, easing swollen feet free, rubbing warmth back into them until they pinked. The boy watched, silent, absorbing everything like a lesson. "You a doctor?" he asked finally. The cowboy snorted softly. "No, just lived long enough to see what helps." Outside, the storm still raged, wind battering the walls, snow hissing against the windows. Inside, the fire held its ground. The cowboy ladled oats into a pot, added water, stirred until it thickened. He set a bowl aside to cool, then knelt in front of Eli. "Eat," he said. Slow. Eli obeyed, spoon trembling at first, then steadier as warmth and sugar did their quiet work. Halfway through, he stopped and looked up. "Can Mama have some?" "When she wakes," the cowboy said. "You save her the best part." Eli nodded solemnly and scraped the sweeter bits to one side of the bowl. Ruth woke with a gasp, eyes flying open, hand clutching at the air. The cowboy was there in an instant, his voice low and anchoring. "Easy, you're safe." Her gaze darted, landed on Eli, and softened. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, thank God." "You're in my cabin," the cowboy said. "Storm's bad. You'll rest here." Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes, sliding into her hair. "I didn't want—" She swallowed, pain tightening her face. "I didn't want him to see me like that." "He saw you keep going," the cowboy said. That counts. She closed her eyes, a shudder passing through her. Eli was at her side in a heartbeat, pressing the bowl toward her. I saved you the sweet part, he said. Ruth smiled, weak but real. You always do. She managed a few spoonfuls before exhaustion pulled her back under. The cowboy checked the cloth on her forehead, replaced it with a fresh one, then added another log to the fire. He sat on the edge of the table, stretching his hands, listening to the storm, and the 3 different rhythms of breath in the room, his steady, Eli's quickening towards sleep, Ruth's fragile but holding. You got far? He asked Eli quietly. Eli shrugged. We walked all day. Mama said we'd be there before dark. He frowned. It got dark anyway. Dark lies sometimes, the cowboy said. Morning usually tells the truth. Eli leaned against him, eyelids drooping. Mama said cowboys don't quit. The words landed heavy and warm all at once. The cowboy stared into the fire, seeing old faces in the flames, old promises kept and broken. She's right, he said softly. Not tonight. Eli slept then, head on the cowboy's thigh, breath finally deep and even. The cowboy didn't move. He fed the fire, kept watch, counted Ruth's breaths when they grew shallow, rubbed her hands when they cooled. Hours passed that way, measured in crackling logs and the slow easing of fear. When dawn finally thinned the dark at the window, the storm had spent itself. Snow lay quiet and clean, the world reset. Inside the cabin, warmth held. The cowboy looked down at the 2 of them, mother and son, stitched together by love and stubbornness, and felt something settle into place, something like purpose. He rose carefully, easing Eli onto the bed beside Ruth, tucking them both in. Then he stepped outside to tend the horse and greet the day, already planning the road ahead, already knowing he wouldn't be riding it alone.